Hello and welcome back to coverage here at GP Montreal. It is time for the finals. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe. I'm in the booth with Jacob Van Lunen, and we've got special guests joining us here as well. Reed Duke. Reed, welcome to the booth.
Hey Marshall. Hey Jake. How you guys doing?
It's nice to see you, buddy. Are you just in time here to see the first turn of the finals? We got Michael Van Vels. He's playing a brutal, it has to be said, a brutal Boros deck in his hands. On the other side, it's Christopher Leonard. He's playing Demir with red. And let's see what happens here in the early stages. An Ornery Goblin, so a card that Michael not really want to tussle with, especially with his one toughness creature here.
So you guys have seen this Boros deck in action, right?
It's dumb.
Yeah, he's been tearing through. He had stumbled a little bit the most recent game, but really nice deck.
Yeah, it's super sweet. Boros perfection here. He's got everything. He's got the curve, he's got the power level, he's got the removal, and he can get the job done. He plays one of his 2 Sky Knight Legionnaires here on turn number 3. He bashes. Though the Ornery Goblin shakes his stick over there at the Skyline Scout and says, stay away. And it worked. Leonard's going to chip in here for 2 damage.
We have Christopher Leonard's deck labeled as Demir with red, but he's actually just Is It.
He's just straight Is It, right?
He's done a nice job turning a lot of unassuming cards into making them do really good work. And he had a really flashy win out of nowhere at the end, combining Sure Strike and Gravitic Punch to make it here to the finals.
Oof.
But now he's got to play different ways. He's got to play defense against this aggressive Boros deck of Michael Van Vels.
Yeah, kind of interesting. He's got the Smelt Ward Minotaur there.
Yeah, it seems like it's going to be hard to set up one of those big turns where he's casting a whole bunch of spells and forcing through damage when he's playing against somebody who's just got a purely faster deck.
That's right. True Fire Captain now for Michael. Passes a turn back after hitting once again with the Sky Knight Legionnaire. Good mana, though, for Chris Leonard.
When I first saw these 4 colored mana symbol cards, I was convinced that it was not going to happen with any sort of consistency, them coming down in the 4th turn.
Mm-hmm.
I was wrong.
You thought they might be a trap?
Well, not necessarily a trap. I just thought that they were like turn 5, 6 plays.
I see.
I've been watching them happen on turn 4 all weekend.
Yeah, the presence of a guild gate in every pack helps smooth it out so that you can actually cast those, it turns out.
Absolutely.
In the meantime, we see Christopher Leonard. He's using Radical Idea.
What do you guys make of this? Leonard attacking despite Michael Van Vels seemingly having a much more powerful board position.
Yeah, this is very brave here from Christopher. And if I'm Michael, I'll tell you what, I would take note. Because Chris won that game in the semis, like you said, kind of out of nowhere. And the Is It deck just in general has the ability to pile on huge amounts of damage in one turn. And Michael's going to have to really try to figure out, can I actually just race here? What an aggressive play here from Christopher.
Jake, what do you make of this? Is one of these players just wrong, or is this the type of game that lends itself more to attacking than to blocking?
So I think both of these decks are very bad at playing defense. And Christopher probably assumes, and perhaps correctly, that if he tries to play a defensive game that he's just doomed, especially with the True Fire Captain on the other side of the table. So here the thought process is that I need to keep on attacking. It's like playing Ixalan Limited. If you ever start blocking, you're losing. So both these players recognize the role of their deck. And I think Christopher here, he's thinking to himself, if I ever start just blocking, then I know I'm going to be losing the game. So I need to remain aggressive. Though it looks like he may just have to pump the brakes just to survive at this point.
Yeah, this is a tough spot now because Michael Van Vel said, you want to race? Sure.
Did Michael mentor onto anything with the True Fire Captain?
No, I think he might have missed that.
And that could make the difference because that's the difference between Christopher being dead to potentially just 2 attackers along with 3-power flyer as opposed to
Yeah, it's been a long weekend for Michael,
flyer.
But he's played pretty tight in the top 8, but perhaps a little misstep from him there. We'll see if it actually punishes him or not. Chris is just going to jam with the squad here. Everybody in. Michael says, okay. No blocks here?
Yeah, the Mesmerist taking out the power of the untapped Skyline Scout. So no favorable blocks for Van Val's.
I assume there must be something like a capture sphere here.
Got to be something big on the side for Christopher Leonard and try to win this race. Even as it sits, if he has a capture sphere, he's dangerously close to death. He's trying to run it about as close as possible, but everything's in the red zone. This attack's lethal. But Chris would not have attacked the way he did if he didn't have some way to interact here. It's going to be unexplained disappearance on the True Fire captain.
And note how Christopher forces Michael to commit his attackers before revealing his trick here. He is certainly trying to set up for an explosive win.
Now, Michael still had a mentor trigger there, though, right?
Yeah, it looked like he targeted on one of the Skyline Scouts, and then Christopher responded. But no, maybe not.
I think he might have just missed it.
Ooh.
Oh, but look at this. He's got the lethal direct current. And Michael says, who needs mentor anyway? I'm going to go upstairs with this burn spell and finish off game number 1 to Michael Van Val's. Boy, this deck does not stop, by the way. And Christopher Leonard, maybe that was the right line, but boy, picking a fight with the Boros deck does not work out well very often for you.
Had Christopher been on the play in that game, I think the race math works out that he actually would have been ahead there in that race, interestingly enough.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's often true in those really close races, but of course, we could have seen Michael, take different lines himself as well. Take a look at his deck here. It's completely absurd.
Yeah, this deck's crazy.
That's a nice deck. Oh, yeah, 3 Sky Knight Legionnaire. I mistakenly said he only had 2. My apologies. 2 Rock Charger, True Fire Captain, 2 Inspiring Unicorn.
I have a quick overarching guideline for rating a Guilds of Ravnica deck when I see it laid out like that, and that's just how much gold color do I see?
And if it was laid out without the numbers, right, like 3 Legionnaires, all of a sudden there's a lot more gold out there. He's running 16 lands with 2 Guild Gates. His curve technically tops out at 6 with Inescapable Blaze. The Venerated Loxodon, though, is deceptive in that it doesn't actually cost 5 mana most of the time to cast. So the Blaze is really his only expensive card. Otherwise, he really does top out at 4 for, every other card in the stack.
It's a great point. It's a really nice-looking deck in particular because he can operate on a small amount of mana, but also has a couple sinks in Boros Challenger and League Guild Mage, things like that.
Yeah. Boy, he's got the removal, too. On the other side, though, there's Christopher.
And some cool cards there, too. I see a Murmuring Mystic. If Christopher is able to untap with that card, he could clog up the board and really put up a defensive force that could allow him to buy the time he needs to win a game. Goblin Electromancer, somewhat unassuming card, could also, decrease the cost of something like a Hypothesizzle, allow him to, again, fight his way into games, allow him to, play an additional 2-drop alongside something like Unexplained Disappearance, and get his way back into a game.
Are we going to see him adjust this deck significantly? Is he, the question I have is he all in on this game plan? Because cards like Maximize Altitude, Radical Idea, Gravitic Punch, right? They don't look great in the face of a Boros deck that's just going to be smashing you over and over. And as we saw, he tried to raise that game and couldn't quite get the job done here. Is an argument to be made here for trying to change to try to make this into more of a control deck?
So I'm just looking over the deck list here, and one of the big problems is that the defensive sideboard cards he has, things like Wall of Mist, things like Wishcoin Crab, those cards are really good at playing defense against a lot of Boros opponents. The problem is Michael Van Val's, he has a deck that has so much evasion and has 2 Rock Chargers, which have the ability to give his creatures that do not have evasion, that if Christopher decides to sideboard into this more defensive plan, he may just find himself with these super underpowered cards that can't even block Michael's offensive force. So perhaps a dead end down that road either way, and he's just sticking with game plan A because he doesn't have another better option. I think, at least on the play, I would just try to race, and I know it's not something I'm likely to win. Yeah, I got a shiver when you said that. I think that would be music to Michael's ears. Okay, let's get underway here in game number 2. No plays thus far. No 1-drop there for Michael. No 2-drop, at least yet, for Christopher.
Land go here for Michael. Radical idea, though, for Chris on end step means that he at least gets to see a few more cards. Kind of the backup mode for that card. Triggering all types of stuff in his deck. With a land here, we can see Sky Knight Legionnaire doing what it does best. Enter the battlefield tapped and attacking. And right away, a good clock. There's Whisper Agent, though, so at least Chris is going to do something with his mana this turn. And maybe could start to try to stem this, this damage race back in his favor. He's going to get rid of an island with Surveil before drawing his card for the turn. May as well attack. What else do you have, though, Chris? That's the question. 3, 17. And he's got 3 mana to spend, and it's a leapfrog, so that is a tool that he can use to help race. I mean, he's now produced 6 power versus only 2. Perhaps a glimmer of hope here for Christopher.
I think I also see a maximize altitude in Christopher's hand. So
okay, so more damage.
Yeah, he has a lot of ways to force through damage.
Yeah, that sends both his creatures to the air for the price of 1 mana.
Mm-hmm. Even gets an extra damage out of the deal. This is getting interesting. In the meantime, Michael's just going to attack with Sky Knight Legionnaire, but what is the follow-up? This is important. This is a really important turn in this game because however he decides to go, ooh, no 4th land for Michael Van Vels. Okay, Sunhome Stalwart's a nice one, but you know what? It's stuck on the ground.
Yeah, and Michael had more offensive plays. He could have cast another Sky Knight Legionnaire, but he decided to make this defensive play, and he may end up getting punished for it.
Speaking of defensive plays, any consideration to not attacking with Sky Knight Legionnaire?
I think that might have been the correct play, though I think in the moment it can be difficult to make that play, especially when you have a 2/2 first striker to leave back.
It did feel like he was thinking about it, though he may have just been thinking about what card to cast out of his hand.
But I think there is definitely a consideration for that. That's a very good point.
Yeah, I'm a lot more likely to take a defensive stance if I'm stuck on lands because all I want is the game to go long enough for me to actually play out the spells in my hand. So I would rather trade off if I can rather than shorten the game and try to race.
In the meantime, Chris Leonard, he resolves Hypothesisal. He ends up discarding the Maximize Altitude, but of course he can use Jumpstart to play that again. He kills the Sunhome Stalwart, getting it out of the way and clearing the way for 6 damage. Michael's brought in a Sworn Companions here. Perhaps could stem the bleeding. It looks pretty good against Leapfrog, unless Christopher can just get that thing in the air every turn, then it won't matter.
This game's going really well for Leonard. He's developing his board. He's filling his graveyard with jumpstart cards to have more options later on. He's making his land drops. He's ahead in the life total race. So this is just exactly the position he wants to be in. But the question is, can he push the advantage? Because we do know Michael Van Val's deck is very powerful and capable of mounting an offense out of very little.
Those 2 lifelink creatures also a little bit terrifying.
Speaking of terrifying, he just played an untapped Steam Vents here. All right, well, we see why. He's got City Watch Sphinx. And he has decided to pump the brakes there. No attacks. The Sphinx dominating the board at the moment. And something that Michael's going to want to deal with. He did hit land number 4 last turn and drew land number 5 this turn as well. So with a handful of spells, he should have good options. Though City Watch Sphinx can be kind of annoying to deal with.
Not a ton of cards that deal with it in his deck. Conclave Tribunal comes to mind.
Yeah, I think he has a Luminous Bonds in there too. Which are actually 2 very good answers for City Watch Sphinx all told, but another important turn for Michael. He's going to play a Sky Knight Legionnaire. Does he have anything else? No. He's going to pass the turn back once again. So taking a slightly more defensive stance. He's down to 11 life versus 14. He decides just to play his creatures and pass. Perhaps doesn't have the removal spell in hand right now to deal with the Sphinx, and it's brick walling basically everything. Christopher has an intense look on his face as he draws his card for the turn. Takes a look over at his graveyard. He does have 1 Jumpstart card. Oh, scratch that. He has 2 Jumpstart cards in his yard. Okay, Smeltward Minotaur once again now for Christopher.
Card's done a lot of work for him so far in the top 8.
Boy, no kidding, especially with those 2
Yeah,
Jumpstart
and
cards.
if Michael doesn't have a way to interact here, I mean, Christopher can jump this team. He has 11 points of power.
So
everything will fly.
Sky Knight Legionnaire can't block because of the Smeltward Minotaur.
And then he can maximize altitude, the Whisper Agent.
It's game. I mean, there is 2 mana on the other side, so if Michael has something, but he needs it. Bang! That's 11 in the air. Do you have anything, Michael? He's doing the math. He says, wait, is that really 11? It is! Wow! Chris Leonard steals one from Michael Van Vels. That game went really well for Chris. You mentioned that, Reed, that things kind of on all metrics were looking good for him. Michael hit his lands and finally started casting spells, but you got a chance to see that Boros on defense, not so great.
Been really impressed with Leonard's ability to force through damage past blockers, and a lot of it has been that Smeltward Minotaur being one of the strongest cards in his deck, but in general, just the trickiness of Izzet having access to so many spells, instants, bounce cards, burn cards. He has a lot of tools with him and a lot more control over managing the race, and that's coming big in this particular red-on-red matchup.
I like that he remained aggressive, though. I think that so often when you play against one of these really aggressive Burrows decks, it's easy to try to play this defensive game and then throw your arms up in the air when it doesn't work. And I think he drafted his deck with a very specific plan in mind, and if he tries to do something that he wasn't meant to do, then it likely would not work. If his semifinal opponent had made it here to the finals, he would have been happy to play a defensive game with a bunch of Locks and Arm Restorers, but Leonard's deck just not well suited to play that game.
I agree, and you drew a great distinction for us, Jake, which the main difference between Game 1 and Game 2 was who was on the play, and Christopher's plan of forcing through damage and engaging in a race worked very well for Game 2, and it'll be this one, the sideboarded game where he's on the draw, where the question is, can he come up with an effective plan? Is he going to stick with the race? And, how's it going to play out?
Yeah, I'm really curious to see how this goes. A lot of it, of course, depending on Michael's draw, right? Christopher is the one who has a little bit more flexibility, right? He can play some card draw spells. He can kind of cycle through his deck. He has some more expensive spells that he can leverage if the game goes a little bit longer, where Michael's a lot more one-sided, right? I mean, he he came to beat down, and that's plan A, and he doesn't have much of a backup plan beyond that. So if he can get out on the front foot, he can force Christopher to have certain answers at certain times, and if he doesn't, he could win the game. If the game goes a little bit longer, Christopher's going to be able to leverage those more expensive spells and that flexibility. So it's really going to be important for Michael to have a good opening hand with a good curve. The good news for him, boy, his deck is built for that. It is built for speed, and it is streamlined on top of it.
One of the key cards I want to keep an eye on for this Game 3 here with Christopher Leonard on the draw is Goblin Electromancer, of which he has 2 copies, but a matchup that's so fast and so much about efficiency. If Christopher is able to play multiple spells per turn off the back of Goblin Electromancer, that can be the difference between giving Izzet the leg up versus Boros just running him down.
Michael looks like he has a 4-lander here with both of his colors. And I think he's capped he has. All right, land go. This is it. This is the game that's going to decide who's going to take home the $10,000 and the trophy. And we are underway. No 2-drop from Michael Van Vels. That is interesting.
Just a $5,000 game of Magic.
Yeah. You'd hope you bring a 2-drop to that. Ornery Goblin now for Chris Leonard. What does Michael have? Okay, he's got a Rock Charger, one of his 2 in the deck. Ornery Goblin showing its colors here, though. It'll be able to attack cleanly through it, as I don't think Michael was interested in making a trade here.
Rock Charger, a strong card in general, but not great at outputting damage by itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I find that card has been especially good with the Mentor mechanic. The fact that it only has 1 power and it gets your Mentor creatures into good attacking position. It's just been a really impressive card for me.
It has for me as well, Jake. And, one of the things that stood out to me when I first saw the set was that it's very close to a functional reprint of a card that we've seen quite a bit over the last few sets, Pegasus Courser, but Rock Charger's an uncommon. I'm like, wait, what's up with that? In the other sets, it was a common, and then you play with it a few times with Mentor, and you're like, yeah, okay. This would not be that fun at common. In the meantime, by the way, Michael cast True Fire Captain on end step. Chris Leonard going for the tempo play here. He played Unexplained Disappearance, and then boom, Murmuring Mystic. One of the best uncommons in this set hits the battlefield here. And if Chris gets to untap, boy, Murmuring Mystic and Izzet is dumb.
Yeah, he has a whole lot of jumpstart cards. If Michael doesn't have an immediate answer, and it looks like he does not, this could be some serious trouble for him.
Crazy, yeah. It matches up well against True Fire Captain, although the Rock Charger is a major issue. But look at this, Hypothesizzle now from Christopher Leonard, and this is how things start to get really out of control. He's going to draw 2 cards, get a bird token, and he's going to want to discard something to get rid of one of these threats on the other side. And look at that, he discards a Radical Idea. Uh-oh. Is this one slipping away from Michael Van Val's? That is a huge swing, those last 2 turns in Chris's direction. Although it does look like Righteous Blow will kill the Ornery Goblin, but still, Murmuring Mystic still on the battlefield. 1 jumpstart card in hand, but 4 cards in the graveyard and 4 cards in hand for Chris Leonard.
It's not often so far this weekend that I've seen a player cast Murmuring Mystic and lose the game.
Right.
I agree with
Especially
that. Especially
Izzet, right? I mean, Izzet with these jumpstart cards, it's just out of control.
Christopher, even if he doesn't want to go crazy with spells this turn, he's a City Watch Sphinx in hand.
He's just going to play a City Watch Sphinx, that's all? Okay. All right, well, let's see if Michael can capitalize here. If he can find a removal spell, he could put in a pretty reasonable attack with Mentor. 4 damage in the air. Chris is down to 13. A card that Christopher is going to have to keep in mind is Inescapable Blaze. This is a card that I saw Michael play in the semifinals where he completely crafted his whole game plan around it, getting extremely aggressive with a pair of Skyline Scouts early in the game, just dumping mana into them to get in for 4, trying to get his opponent down within range of Inescapable Blaze, because it turns out when your opponent starts the game at 14 and you know it and they don't, you can steal wins with that. And in the meantime, that's exactly what happens here. Luminous Bonds is going to lock down the Sphinx and clear away an attack for 4 damage. Chris is down to 9. He's got to be careful. Feels like it's his to lose here with that Murmuring Mystic, but hey, there's also Cosmotronic Wave for Michael Van Val's in his deck. And that's the type of card that can steal a game too, right?
Great point, yeah. The Wave and the Inescapable Blaze are 2 cards that, even if things are looking pretty good for Christopher, they can really change the dynamic.
Yeah, he's going to want to be very careful here.
Something we need to watch out for this game also, I believe Christopher has Gravitic Punch in hand, so even though that City Watch Sphinx has been taken out of commission by the Luminous Bonds, Christopher has the potential to have 2 Lava Axes at his leisure.
Just kaboom.
Wow, and normally one of the things about Lava Axe is you have to invest mana and not impact the board, but with Murmuring Mystic, that's no longer true, so he can unload 5 damage while producing a chump blocker, which that lends itself to racing very nicely.
Yeah. Van Val's currently at 15. Wojak Bodyguards to play now for Christopher Leonard.
And that does not play defense particularly well.
No. No, it does not. He may be able to start mounting some type of offense with it, but he just has to be very careful. There it is, Gravitic Punch. You called it, Jake. He's got it in his hand, and he says, how about you take 5 damage and I get a bird token? Go. The question is, are we going to start seeing these bird tokens block?
And I think we will in the very near future. He knows about Inescapable Blaze, and I think that's a big factor here in all of his decision-making.
Currently, Christopher is completely tapped out. Oh, big turn for Michael. He's actually going to take a minute. I haven't seen him do this yet in the top 8. He's crossed his arms, and he's doing the math. He keeps looking at the life totals and figuring out what's going to happen. There's a lot for him to process here. Izzet is probably the scariest deck to play because they tend to beat you out of nowhere. You think you're doing fine at 10 life, and then boom, you're dead.
Yeah, and I mean, now he knows about this Gravitic Punch. He knows about the 5-power guy. He knows that Christopher has cards in his deck like Sure Strike, which could turn that Gravitic Punch into 8 damage out of nowhere.
Yeah, and you see Michael doing math now. He's got to be very careful, but at the same time, he does feel a lot of pressure to keep attacking here. He knows if he just sits here and stares at a Murmuring Mystic, that doesn't end well for him either. So in they come, both creatures, and Christopher Leonard is put to the test on does he chump block with his bird tokens? 1, 0, both?
I
not
don't
an
think
easy
0.
decision.
I think the only one I can rule out is 0. He's in a really good position here. I don't think he wants to lose the Inescapable Blaze.
Okay, so if he's determined that that's not an option for him, then it's either 1 or both. He can soak up 2 or 4 damage, and you can see the pressure on his face here. Look at Christopher. Wow, there is some serious tension down in the feature match area right now. You said it a minute ago, Jake. This is a $5,000 game of Magic. The winner of this game will take home $10,000 and a trophy. The loser still gets $5,000, but boy, that's a big gap.
And Christopher here, I think he realizes this right here is perhaps the moment where he makes the decision that will decide whether or not he
I
brings
just saw a
home.
hand motion. He took it.
Whoa!
Chris Leonard, no fear, just says, sure, I'll take it. I go down to 5. Whoa. Gutsy or reckless, I'll let you decide, but unbelievable.
Well, it looks like it just won him the game. Right? He has the Gravitic Punch in his graveyard. He has Radical Idea there. He has this number of attackers.
Can he actually get through for lethal here, though? There are 2 blockers. Gravitic Punch you down to 5. That's a good start, but the Wojak Bodyguard has some friends on the ground down there. No, it does look like he has it. Otherwise, how is he just attacking with everything, right?
He must.
Looks like he's deciding if these are going to be his attacks.
I'm nervous for him right now.
Yeah, this is really intense.
Like, my chest is like pressed against the table.
He must have the Sure Strike that you mentioned, Jake. If he has Sure Strike plus Punch, then that's 8 damage from the City Watch Sphinx. And even with 2 blocks here, he's guaranteed to get in for 2 damage. Michael Van Vel's once again doing math, but he's certainly realized that blocks are a must. These are 2 pretty easy blocks. And that's 2 damage through. If he has it, it could be over right here.
Does he?
Yeah, I think he does.
Oh my goodness.
There it is, 2-mana Sure Strike. My City Watch Sphinx. Get Gravitic Punch. You do have to discard a card, but he has one to discard, and that's going to do it. Christopher Leonard wins GP Montreal. Bang, bang, with a punch.
Wow.
It's quite a finish for
Amazing.
Christopher. Stealing games left and right with that Izzet deck. And congratulations, Chris Leonard. You are our champion. Wow, great stuff from here. He's our champion here in Montreal. Reed, stealing them.
Yeah, boy. Of all the decks of our top 8 competitors, Christopher Leonard had one of the least flashy. He didn't have Niv Mizzet. He didn't have a perfect Boros curve out. He didn't have any other mythic rares. He was making it work with commons, just the basics. And I think what really helped him was the concentration of jumpstart cards, in particular cheap jumpstart cards, to multi-trigger his Smelt Ward Minotaur, his Murmuring Mystic, and he got the job done.
Yeah, that was super impressive stuff for him. And, yeah, wow. All right, well, we're going to bring We're going to bring Chris in here for his winter interview, so let's bring him over here. And we'll get a quick word with Christopher. Here, put this on for me, Chris. Oh, man. And welcome to the booth, our GP Montreal champion, Christopher Leonard. Congratulations!
Thank you.
Hey, let's get this trophy in here too, because they'll get the shot on us in just a minute. Dude, you just stole that thing, man! Punching, and you somehow found a way to be faster than the Boros deck, and that was no joke. I'm sure you saw the list. That Boros deck was a real deal.
Yeah.
How did you do it?
Man, I'm just doing greater amount of damage than they does.
Yeah.
And
in a
like
shorter amount of time.
Like I wrote on these sheet.
Uh-huh.
Gravitic Punch stole games.
Let's see. You said,
Crazy.
What did you play in Sealed? What were your most critical cards? Is it Gravitic Punch? Right there on the front. I guess you walked the walk as well as talking the talk. Man, what an incredible run for you. What is this your first GP top 8? Like, what's your experience level
it's
here?
my first day 2.
It's your first day 2? Wow, and you ran it all the way in, and all of a sudden you're the champion.
Yeah.
Incredible. So this is going to be your first time playing on the Pro Tour as well?
The second time.
Second time.
Yep.
Okay, are you excited for that?
Yeah, really.
Yeah, that's going to be super awesome. Are you from here? I guess I can look on here.
Yep.
Hometown, Montreal.
Yep.
Wow, so you got to keep the trophy here. What does that mean to you and everybody here from Montreal?
It's great. I mean, all my friends, they're not there.
Don't worry, they were hanging around the whole time.
Man, it means a lot.
Yeah,
It means a lot.
super
I've
great.
been playing Magic for a long time, and it's the first time that I won something like this.
How long have you been playing?
Since Scourge.
Since Scourge?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is a long time. You've been playing way longer than I have.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Wow.
For real. Dude, congratulations. That was super fun to watch. I'll tell you what, not only did you win, you did it in very exciting fashion. Sure Strike Gravitic Punch game. That was really great stuff.
That was good.
Wow. What an exciting finish. We got a chance to see Guilds of Ravnica out in the wild here. And what's the best guild? Well, it's obviously Is It. You just have to ask him, and he'll tell you. And if you disagree with him, you know what'll happen. So that's going to do it for our coverage here from GP Montreal. Thank you so much for joining us for the weekend of limited action. We really appreciate you taking the time. We've got great events coming up in the coming weeks as well. We certainly hope you'll join us for those. We want to take a time to thank everybody here that helps make this event possible, right? These things do not run without the judges and staff that help make these Grand Prix weekends go. We really want to say thank you to them and to Channel Fireball Events for putting on all of these events as well. And of course, to you for coming to hang out with us. Once again, congratulations to our champion, Christopher, and for everybody here on the coverage team. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.